Hey, everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. This is a Byers Auto rapid reaction. It's Friday, but when something like this happens, we don't just wait till after a game for a rapid reaction. The head coach of the Buckeyes, Ryan Day, has tested positive for COVID. He will not travel with the team on Saturday for the game at Illinois. We are under the impression actually, we know for a fact that the number of positive tests on the team are below the threshold. The game is still on as scheduled on Saturday at Illinois. At Lettermen Row, we are not going to name any specific names until the availability report is released by the school in the best interest of privacy and for allowing for the fact that some testing results may still change. Ohio State is waiting on PCR tests for basically the entire team just in the interest of safety so they can play that game. They will travel on Saturday morning. They will fly out the day of the game and play the Illini. Major changes as the Buckeyes try to make sure that they can mitigate this pandemic the best they can and continue to play. That's Jeremy Birmingham, Tim May, and Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward as we break this down here. Tim, the latest that we've heard here. Now, Ryan Day, this is a major deal. This is the head coach of the program that will not be able to go on the road. We know that the number is under the threshold for the Buckeyes. As you and I have reported, what do you feel comfortable with here?
Oh, I just I'm really curious because you and I conversed during the week. We had heard the number was 5 that they were dealing with from a positive standpoint, and Ryan Day wasn't one of them. So, what's curious there is, whether any of these are false positives, and how many were, and if none of them are. We all know what happened with Justin Hilliard when he traveled to Penn State, many weeks ago when you broke that story the day of the game that it was a false positive, but it didn't do him any good because the test was done that day. But the bottom line is, the big question is, how did he get into the program to a certain extent? The contact tracing, I think they felt very good about their contact tracing, and the guys they've kind of zeroed in on who might have come in contact with these 5 guys. That's why they're still gung ho as we speak right now about getting on an airplane at 8:30 in the morning, making that 45-minute flight to Champaign, getting off and going playing a game and then coming home, And you and I talked about this. You remember this. I even wrote about this in preseason, that there was a possibility they could do something like this, and they preferred not to. But as of right now, I think there's a good chance they're going to play this game. But, who knows? I just think the Ryan Day thing is very interesting because, 2 of the top 4 coaches in the country, top 4 teams in the country will be without their head coach on Saturday.
Yeah, Nick Saban will not be able to coach as well. And so the original plan, to clarify that, Ohio State was already, aware of positive tests, obviously, throughout the week. They were going to leave at 9 o'clock on Friday night. They were going to go straight to the hotel and then straight to their rooms. There were not going to be any team meetings in Champaign. They were going to get a boxed lunch when they got there. The entire trip was designed to minimize exposure. They knew that this was happening. That's why they spread out on the indoor facility for their Thanksgiving dinner on Thursday. To play a football game, you still have to be around each other. But this is now the next step they've taken. They're basically moving that flight back 12 hours. And Birmingham, as Tim alluded to there with Nick Saban and now Ryan Day. Ryan Day has been as cautious as anybody in the country about trying to fight this, stay safe, wearing masks, not being around his own family. The fact that it would get to him, I would think, is a little bit stunning.
I mean, it is, but it also, I guess, shouldn't be. I mean, we've sort of realized as a society right now that it's pretty much everywhere. The exposure is going to be a possibility no matter what you do, where you go. There certainly are things you can do to lessen the risk, but the reality is that everyone has probably already been exposed or will be exposed to it. And the good news is that most people are going to be fine. I talked to people who heard from Ryan Day on Friday and were on calls with him, and they said he seemed pretty much okay, no problems, which is obviously good news. But, I think Tim is going to probably draw some fire here because the Dr. Pepper commercials out there with Brian Bosworth and the Jinx. Tim decided on Monday to ask, hey, Ryan, aren't you glad that you guys have handled this so well? And then here we are 4 days later, and things have changed. But the truth is that it's out there. You do the best you can, and you hope that you are like most people who contract the virus and are fine. It is unfortunate for the football team with 3 weeks to go in the regular season that now you're looking at however many guys end up not playing on Saturday will not play again until the Big Ten championship game if the Buckeyes can remain eligible for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I asked Pete Werner, I said, knock on wood, how well they had handled it, just from the leadership standpoint of the team and stuff. But like you just pointed out, Jeremy, it only takes one or two people to show up with it, or you come in contact and everything, all bets are off. And, and he even pointed that out. They've been as vigilant as you can be, I think, as a group of guys who aren't living in a bubble somewhere. And to have this now sneak in is, and as you pointed out, and we'll point out more, if you're a player and you've tested positive, and it's real, you miss the rest of the regular season based on the current Big Ten rules. That's the real slam here. If it's a prominent player, we've heard there might be only one real prominent player in this group, but we'll wait to find out tomorrow.
Yeah, Spencer, when you look at this, so we're going to touch on Larry Johnson and his role as the interim coach in a second. But when you look at, Ryan Day not being there or flying out on the day of the game, I mean, he has talked repeatedly about the value of routine. Obviously, he's entirely removed from that now. The players were only able to go through a lighter practice on Wednesday, a walkthrough. They practiced in the morning on Thursday, then had a Thanksgiving meal together. Like, I'm not saying that there's like any kind of upset alert here for Ohio State, but this is a very interesting situation for them because the whole week now has been thrown up in the air.
Yeah, the two things that they stress the most at Ohio State are culture and routine. And you take one of those things out of the equation, and you've got a little bit of a mess. I don't want to panic people, but it is a little bit of a scattered around, for lack of a better word, mess, because they just haven't been able to do what they're comfortable doing. They've been doing it since even Urban Meyer got there. Even up to the best Fridays in football. You can't imagine that probably took place today just because of the severity of the situation and what's going on. That routine is so important to what they do every week and how they prepare for a game. And to take that away and to take that out of the equation, it really probably does mess with some of these guys. And you have to, if you're Ohio State, you have to hope and rely on the talent that you have. Ohio State's 2 or 3, the third best, most talented team in the country. You have to rely on that now because your routine's gone, your head coach is gone. And you kind of have to rally around what's been happening all week and just rely on what you do know because you don't have that routine.
I actually think that there's a positive here. I think there's a positive that these next 2 weeks are on the road as opposed to having to deal with the home environment and all the other stuff that happens when you're playing in Columbus, because the road schedule is a little scattered anyway. It is a little bit more dynamic than the stay at home stuff. So I think it actually helps that they're traveling to Illinois, because if it was here in Columbus, you have a lot more stuff to deal with. But for Ohio State, you just plug along. As Spencer said, it's the most talented team in the Big Ten by far. And you'd have to imagine that the leadership of the team, and I'm sure we'll talk about those coaches, but the way they're set up is smart for what Ohio State, for these sort of bizarre moments.
Yeah. And pushing the trip back, I was under the impression one of the reasons they were leaving at 9 p.m. was because of rules in Illinois that kind of like limit group meetings, et cetera. So, that was one of the things that was going on. But now pushing the trip back, as you guys know, and Austin, this, they do for a noon game. The testing that matters is what's done the day before or the afternoon before. And, of course, for a night game, you do the testing the day of the game. So they're going to know, later this evening, I'm sure, whether or not the trip is definitely on. And this gives them the ability to just cancel, et cetera, as opposed to flying over there and finding out, in fact, they're not going to play. So this is, there are all kinds of reasons why they've also pushed the airplane ride back.
Berm, when you look at Ryan Day not being available, and I alluded to this, Larry Johnson will be the interim coach for the Buckeyes. He's sort of waited for an opportunity like this for a long time. He never would have ever imagined that this would be how it came. There were several people that asked, well, why is this not Kerry Combs? Why is this not Kevin Wilson? I mean, Larry Johnson is the associate head coach. He is certainly somebody that the entire roster respects. Is this about what you would have expected in the event that this unexpected situation came to be?
Yeah, and there's a primary reason for that. It's because on offense, it's Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day handle the play calling. On defense, it's Kerry Combs and Greg Madison who handle the play calling. And so you don't have to disrupt what they're doing during the game, and you can let Larry Johnson handle the other stuff because Larry's defensive line group A is extremely mature and a veteran, and you don't have to do as much in-game coaching with them as you do other position groups because he has guys like Jonathan Cooper who are so firmly entrenched as leaders in that position. I think it's the perfect choice for what you said. Number one, everyone respects the hell out of Larry Johnson, and you know that he's going to be able to motivate them in a certain way, but also it allows the guys who are calling the game, the guys that are really in the booth for the games, to stay where they are and to make sure that the continuity on the game itself doesn't get lost.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, Larry Johnson, I was going to use a bad word there. He got messed over by the fact that Penn State paid him short shrift when it came to replacing Joe Paterno. I don't know if you guys agree or not, but I totally believe that this guy, you know, is extremely well respected, keeps a cool head, despite the fact he can get fired up, keeps a cool head. He's long deserved to be a head coach. I'm not sure he wanted it this way, though.
Yeah. Spencer, as you look at this, I mean, we all filed our bold predictions this morning. I think we all expected Ohio State would win this game comfortably. Do you think, and you guys can all answer this after Spencer jumps in, does this change anything for you? Routine changes. The roster is not going to be 100%. We know that. Any uncertainty for you on Saturday at noon?
It's just interesting to me because this team's been a little doubted all week. You know, they're 4 behind Clemson in the college football playoff rankings. Talk about the secondary all week. You talk about the defensive line not getting enough pressure. And now you give them a reason to rally around their head coach that's not going to be there, who's going to have to watch the game on Fox Sports 1 like a lot of the rest of us. And so you give them a reason to play for their head coach, a reason to play for the guys who aren't going to be there and make the trip to Illinois. And I think this maybe even makes it a tougher matchup for Illinois because now Ohio State's going to be even more fired up. So I don't really think it has much of an impact. I know, you know, Illinois has a good run game. Illinois has some pieces on defense. So that's what Ohio State had to focus on before. They have to focus on the exact same things right now. And as long as Ohio State has a lot of its weapons, which we expect them to, because it's only 5 guys. And if you take 5 players off the Ohio State roster, it's still far more talented than Illinois. I don't expect this to really change much of the game other than unless the routine really can affect Ohio State that badly.
Yeah, and the good news is the weather's supposed to be pretty good over there, in the 50s, I think, and no wind. And the last thing you want to ever do is play at Illinois in November with a wind. So, a lot of things are still in Ohio State's favor. And, with that said, there are key players that could get knocked off on an Ohio State roster where you would put this game in a little bit of jeopardy. But so far, I'm hearing that those guys aren't involved.
Yeah, and as long as number 1's on the field for Ohio State, which right now we have every reason to believe that he is going to be, I think that things are going to be fairly okay for the Buckeyes. It's not a situation like Mississippi State is traveling 47 scholarship players this weekend after traveling 43 scholarship players a week ago. Now, the Big Ten wouldn't allow that to happen regardless, but it's not a situation to this point where there is a huge deal. Losing Ryan Day sucks. Losing even one player for 3 weeks sucks. But Ohio State's roster should be able to handle that. I mean, maybe 30 points gets knocked down to 24 just because of the weirdness of the travel. But it's Ohio State versus Illinois. I don't think you should expect much to change.
Hey, Boston, awesome. Austin, awesome. I get all your nicknames mixed up. Can we now segue into the fact that Mississippi State gave Georgia a hell of a game, and yet Georgia dropped, was still in the top 10 in the college football playoff rankings? Or
we're gonna save that for the point. Yeah, we're gonna save that for the Tim May podcast. We're gonna get into a lot of those strange situations going on. But right now, Ryan Day has tested positive for COVID. The Buckeyes coach will not be there on Saturday at Illinois. As of this point, as we break down rapid reaction brought to you by Byers Auto, the Buckeyes are still expecting to play. They are currently under the positive threshold for COVID. And we can also get into the very bizarre restrictions that the Big Ten laid out for this season later. this small amount that we're aware of. Doesn't seem like it should put the game in jeopardy, but that's really been the case as Ohio State had to evaluate whether they'd be able to travel on Friday night or Saturday morning to play Illinois. Again, this has been Rapid Reaction brought to you by Byers Auto. That's Jeremy Birmingham, Tim May, and Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward. Lettermen Row is still on the way to Champaign. We're going to still have coverage for this game as long as it's played. Stay with us at lettermenrow.com for full coverage of the Buckeyes all year round. We will see you there.